Right folks, it's good to be back again. Time to get straight into this now. So from the last video you could see that my lash pad contact point was a little bit off to one side, and I think if I understand it correctly, if I get the shim plates underneath these cam towers, it's going to give them just a small little lift up, and that will push the contact point over to be more center on the lash pads. So what I'm doing here is just giving a quick reassemble, put in the shims and tighten the towers back down again. Next thing you need to do is torque it. Now, a big heads up. The book that I showed you in the last episode, it actually defines the torque on these, as you can see on the screen right here. I think that might be the torque of these bolts themselves, not the torque of those bolts in the aluminium. If you go there, you are going to strip them out, and that's a big issue with the book, because I was kind of following it like a gospel, but when I see those figures being so high, I decided to go online and do a bit of research. So I did, and the recommendation by a lot is these figures right here, and just to basically bring it in slowly. Now I've already started bringing it in slowly already, just to kind of make sure that you get that rotation. And yeah, you definitely want to feel that running smooth with one hand. Okay, so I'm going to now just torque these down all the way across, and hopefully by pulling that down, it's not going to cause any more twists in it. If we can get that to rotate nicely by hand like this, then we're going to go in and get our rocker covers or rockers on, and see if the contact point moves further that way, because the shims are up. So let's get cracking on that. Okay, we're going to do a before and after kind of setup here. So this is one of the wipes we've done before, and you can see that it's quite close to the front and quite a far bit back from the back. So what we're going to do now is clean this off, pop it in, and see if it comes back just by actually adding those shims. Bring it up. This is an exhaust port, so we're looking for 0.25 millimeter. Just about there. So now we're going to rotate it twice. I'm trying to not let it flip over, so it's not skewing any of the results. And then I'm getting tight in here. I know I'm touching the edge of the cam, but I'm really trying not to put much pressure on it to mark it or anything. Okay, so as you can see now is that has come right back 50-50 right on the area. So out here you have a nice even centered mark. Okay, so that shim definitely centers out those rockers. Okay, for the next stage of assembly, I'm just putting on a tiny little bit of grease on them, because they don't seem to have any kind of direct oiling channel. It just seems that the oil kind of drops in from being splashed around the place in there, and then pours down over the whole lot and keeps that lubricated. Likewise, I'll put on a little bit of wax there, or sorry, a little bit of grease there, and then I'll put on a little bit of grease maybe on these cams, so that when it's cranking over to get that first start, there's some sort of protection on them. And then obviously when the oil comes up through, it'll dilute this, and then we can change the oil after the first 1,000 kilometers or so. Okay guys, we went and we adjusted all of these again, so we are now back to 0.2 for all the intake ports, and 0.25 clearance for the exhaust ports, just to take for expansion. And now we just need to put on these clips, and that is the head, nicely centered, balanced, level, cleared, and shaved, good to go. I'm really looking forward to getting this onto the engine now. Okay folks, there you go. We are all assembled and all our tolerances are set up, all our springs are in, everything's torqued down, everything looks really good. That cam before anything was connected to it was turning nice and free. So we are looking golden with this head. She is coming together really well. So now we're going to look at getting this bolted down onto the block, and get all our gaskets again, get it torqued down, and let's start getting this machine assembled. So we have our crank bearings, and we have our truss bearing on the bottom. So I've obviously measured the crank and the mass majority as well within spec. One of the journals is kind of on the lower end, but it's still within spec, so we should be safe enough to replace them with these just straight on. They're the Conrod shell bearings. So what we're looking to do now is pop out the old bearings, these ones to start with. We'll clean out so that this bottom surface here is nice and dry and clean, and then we'll start popping these on and getting the crank nicely contained and lubed up. Okay, as I kind of pointed out before, you can see the wear pattern on the upper end of the crank. A lot of it is off to one side, some are worse than others. So we're going to pop these out now and clean up and get ready to put in the other ones. Alright folks, we have our engine turned upside down. We have the shells removed from here and we've given everything a little wipe down. So we're just going to start the assembly process and get this rotating again. Just in the background is make sure that this breathable mesh is all cleared out. So you can see down here, I just basically soaked it in thinners for a night and then give it a couple of bangs and a shake out, and that's after clearing that out nicely. So now that we have that in, we're going to stick on our little clamp that holds it in place, which is this fella. And that's just going to go down and hold that in place there. Okay, so now that we have that in place, we're going to give these a quick wipe over and put in our bearings. These are the new ACL race bearings. To look at them, look a bit strange. They look like they're actually really worn. I had to do a bit of research. I actually had to contact them themselves to see if this was okay, and that's just the electroplating process. So these will look worn when they're going in, but they're actually brand new. So this all got a cleaning before. This is just the last go. To make sure that you do both sides of the center truss bearing. Perfect. So the two end bearings are actually wider than these center ones, and then this is the truss bearing. So you can actually identify by having these two the same. It can be identified as having this hole in the middle. Now I don't think it's applicable to this engine, but I've seen, according to the manual, that there's sometimes a little bore here. That's to do with the hydraulic chain tensioner or something. We don't need it for this engine because there is no hole there. So just get these, gently put them in place, press them down. Make sure your rubber glob doesn't get caught underneath and pinched. And make sure that there's no oil underneath, because we just want that to be a mated surface. These bearings are standard size. If you've seen before, I measured the crank and the crank is good. Everything's within spec. Now I do a plastic gauge, so that if we wanted to go and just check the gaps in this, we can, but I'm kind of confident that everything's fine. If this was an engine that had been starved of oil or something like that, or had some sort of overheating damage to it, I'd probably be getting in here and confirming these measurements, but as far as I can see, everything's fine in this engine. Good confirmation to know you got it right is when you rotate the assembly after you've cranked everything down, it should rotate smoothly. If it isn't, don't bother. So just making sure everything's clean out in the back of this, and obviously making sure I don't scratch it in any way at all. Fits so nice. Just to let you know that the little nip there matches up with that, so you know that these will actually go only pointing one way. That ensures that the hole for the oil feed is in the right location, and that these can't slip out anyway at all. Now before I do anything else, I'm going to make sure there's a nice bit of oil in there. So I've just opened up my gasket kit and started separating it out, and kind of located my rear main seal, and then these two little blocks which kind of go down either side here. You need a little bit of sealant on a couple of points in here as well before you assemble it. It's just pulling together the crank and just double checking to make sure there's no dirt or anything kind of in there. It looks fairly spotless, to be honest. The one thing that does jump out at me is this little groove here. This is from the rear main seal, pressing in at that one point, just wearing over time. You can actually feel that. So the advice is that wherever you located it before, just offset it just by a couple of mil, so that the lip is actually on a new track on the outside of just the plain shaft itself. So we'll just make sure we do that before we go ahead. I think the trick is something like Vaseline over this first, put the seal in place, and then you drop the whole lot down together. So there are a few things you need to prep here, okay? So all cleaned down, bearings in, we've oiled them up, we've the crank over there cleaned off, and we have the seal popped onto the end of it nice and square, but the edge of the seal, or the lip of the seal, is not sitting into the groove, it's just offset a little bit. Now the next big stage is quite quick, so you need to kind of have yourself prepared. So these are the little rubber blocks that go down either side over here. And the kit is supposed to come with these nails, which it didn't come with, but I just pull off the old nails off the old seals. What happens is that when they're pushed down, these are tapped in after that kind of expands out the seal, and then you just leave the top bit just ever so proud, and then when you squeeze down, that actually just knocks it into place. So then you have a good seal. On top of that, you will need sealer, RTV sealer, across here, here, and then up along the inside of the block over here and here as well. So you'll see that as it happens. Now the main trick is that you're getting this on, you're getting the sealer on, and you're getting it clamped down before the sealer starts going off. That's the main key thing here as well. Another bit of prep as well that needs to go on in the background. We know these came off, they're fine, but when we change these, or before we change the bearings in these, it's recommended that you give these a little rub on the face with a file, and that just ensures that there's no little edges sticking up there. You're not really removing material, you're just removing any kind of dirt and gunk that's there. So I think what I'm going to do first now is take off these cups, clean it off, give that little file, and get the new ones in. Essentially what you do is you just give a little clean off here. Just make sure there's no burrs on the net at all. And you're not even putting much pressure on it. Just to make sure you're down at metal. I'll be happy with that. Okay, so this is our outermost block here. Arrow points to the front. Flip her over. This is a brand new bearing. So just drop her into place. Nice. So that one's ready. We're going to do that with the whole lot of them, and then when we drop our crank in, we can drop these down and get cranking or torquing down these bolts here at the end quickly before the sealing goes off. And anyway, okay, I am good to go. So I've cleaned these and put the caps into them, and I've arranged the bolts all in order here so that I can just basically transfer them over to here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is drop the crank in. The seal will all be ready to be on it here. I'm going to run a 22mm bead of, I'll zoom in here. I'm going to run a 22mm bead of RTV up to about there. That basically means when the seal comes down, it's going to be bang on halfway between it. So it's just going to create a barrier between here and here, so there's no leak at that point. And then there's going to be a little bit of RTV put onto the side seals as well. So it's usually a bit of a rush to get this done because you're fighting the sealer, so you just don't waste any time here. So the crank is ready over here. So when I drop that in, I can put it in place, and then I can drop some oil on top of the journals and start tightening it down. Let's go for it. So now I can get the crank popped in place. So next we do a little sealer up both sides of that. So the book states do 25mm or 1 inch starting down at the bottom parting line. Like that, probably a little bit excessive. So the next thing to do is to get this registered. So the advice is to just stop about an 1/8 inch or 2 or 3 mil there shy. Put in your seals, button them out, and then you're going to put the cap down on top of it, or you're going to bang the cap down in place. You don't use the bolts to jack it down at that point. But I will put them in to keep it centered. Just make sure everything's lining up. The story goes, if you use the bolts, pull it in, it won't pull them in evenly. and then it can cause damage, which we don't want to do. Alright, so they're sealed in place. So apparently these do have a left and a right, but when I looked at these, I don't see any difference in them. So I think they recommend that you do oil the seal. That way it'll flow in a bit better. Hopefully this will slide down nicely. So the book recommends you push the seal until they bottom out. Just there now. Excellent. So our seals are bottomed down, and now what we need to do is tap this in. Not tighten it down with the bolts, but tap it in with the back of my hammer. So visually it looks like the block is kind of angled back that way. So I'm just going to see if snugging them down with the bolts, which is the time that these will be done now. Yeah, that just seems to square it up nicely. So we're not torquing these to spec, we're just basically bringing them to their happy place. Yeah, and the outside seems to be a lot better now. Now that we have these in place, now we can drive the nails down into them. So these are the old recycled nails. The book recommends that these bevels are pointed towards the seal, probably not to pinch it. But when I looked at these ones here, whoever installed them last used the bevel edges at the top, which doesn't make sense. So I'm actually going to put on a little bevel on these myself with the file. The reason the bevel's there is so that it doesn't catch the seal. So I don't know if you can see that now, but we have a bevel put onto that so that it doesn't dig into the seal anymore. So the bug asks you to leave them out just a little bit, so when the next pan clamps in there, it's a good bit kind of a crossover between one and the other. So with the compression of the nail in there, the seal seems to have expanded and it seems to kind of come up a little bit, so I think that's okay, I think that's normal. So now we're going to put on all caps, and as I put them on, I'm going to oil them. So before we go tighten anything up fully, we need to just make sure that the truss bearings are aligned in there. So what you do is you basically force the crankshaft up this way, that kind of flattens them out. And you keep moving them forward and back, just so that the two shells, the top and bottom ones, just basically line up and just kind of move over together. And then when you have that done, you can crank it down to 33 to 40, I think it's 4 pounds. Okay, so I've put that screwdriver in there to push the hole out to the right. That's just kind of in between the steel part of this block here and the counterweight. So if that's pushed right there, that basically means that the pressure's on that bearing on that side. So just make sure that's flush. Okay, now that we have it all torqued down, next thing we need to check now is to see if the truss bearing has enough space in it. So what I've done now is I've just tapped this screwdriver in here to try and drive the hole out to the right. And what we're looking to see is that the larger spec, which is 0.18 of a mil or 0.007 of an inch, does not fit in there. That basically means that the play is not too big. And then on the other end of the scale, we need to go down to 0.05. I think it's 0.051, but 0.05 is all I have in the gauge, and it's 0.002 of an inch. So what we want is this not to fit in, but this to fit in. That basically means that it's not too big a gap, but it's not too tight. It's definitely not fitting in anywhere. That is. So you can see that goes in there nicely. So what we've proved there now that is that the truss bearings size nicely is within the two tolerances that we need, which is basically not too big, not too small. When you actually push this left and right, you can't see it moving. If you look at the oil, you can see the oil kind of mopping in and out there a little bit as you do that, but there's very, very little motion in this. So yeah, we're happy with that. Okay, I've just got this block back from the machine shop and the cross hatching has been put into it. But I just wanted to kind of show you this just so that you can see the gap measurement. I'll put this in the far side here so it's visible. So when you pop this in, kind of pop it in quite high and then you can use a piston to plunge it down to an equal depth. This is the new ring. That is the old one right there. Okay, so piston. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to put in a gap gauge, or we need to put in a feeler gauge in here and see what the difference is. Now this one measured before, it was 0.65 I think was where we were landing. We'll just do it now again now that it's the cross hatching put in. It is a 0.65. It's going in there but it's a little bit tight. We'll go to 0.63. 63 goes in there, so it's 0.64 of a gap there. We're going to go across here now and we're just going to bring it down. We're looking for about 0.3 to 0.4. 0.58. I'm hoping none of these fit in. I'm going to go right down to 0.5. 0.48. 0.48. It's a little bit high, but should be an awful lot better than it was. Right folks, do a little bit of assembly off screen here. This is the pistons with the new Hastings rings. These are a standard fit. And what I've done here now is I've put the rings on in the following orientation. So if you look at the top one, it's open at 10 o'clock. And when you look with the notch pointing forward, which is this way in the engine. And then the next ring is opened at 4 o'clock. And then on the spacer ring, the next one is at 10, which is about there. And then we've got our little compression ring, or spacer ring, which is set at 12 o'clock with the little indents here. And then the bottom one is at 4 o'clock again. So they're put into that order there just to make sure that there's the longest flow path for gases to kind of go through it to get out the bottom. So what I'll do now is I'll get these all lubed up now and pop them in. Okay, so I have number one piston at the front, the little divot taken out, point to the front, and I have the rings orientated so that they are lining up 10, 4, 10, 4. And now I need to just clamp them all together and try and slide it down. Now before I would have been able to do this with motorbikes, where I was actually able to manipulate the rings one by one, drop them down, but I'm just a little afraid of actually hurting this one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to re-dip this in oil again and put in my clamp, which I bought for €7 plus delivery, and send it home. Okay, so I have all the caps on and I kind of have them hand tightened down, nothing torqued in yet, and I'm just going to do a recap on the position of everything. If you look on the inside here, you'll see two on the conrod and then 2 on the cap, and that is in position 2, and they are to be on the side opposite to where the oil filter is, and that will make sure that the little notch on the piston on the other side is pointing to the front. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I put in the nut here with the 27 socket attached to it. I'm going to rotate these until they're at the top or bottom dead center. Torque them and just work my way through by rotating the crank until each of them come around to the top, bottom dead center, and we'll just get them torqued in position. So one thing to watch out for when torquing these is that there's an 8mm and a 9mm nut bolt. So the last thing you want to do is torque the 8mm bolt to the 9mm torque, which will snap them potentially or damage them, or torque the 9mm bolt to the 8mm torque, which means it'll be loose. So I think we'll just do a double check and we'll just make sure that that's the 8 rather than the 9mm before we go any further. So I just undid that nut there and zeroed out my vernier and just measure the hole on the inside of that, and that's coming up at I push it, it's in around 7.92. 7.8 would be the bore for an M9. Obviously if this was an M8 and you drill a hole 8, there'd be no threads on it. So this is an M9 nut and bolt setup, which is great. It basically means it's stronger here and you get to torque them even more, so I should be able to handle the power a bit better. Maybe the M8s are for the smaller engines, I'm not too sure. So you can see here, according to our little Bible, 9mm, nuts are torqued to 33 and then 40 foot-pounds. So we'll go across them, tighten them all to 33 and then tighten them all to 40 foot-pounds. Just while I'm here, kind of get the pistons a nice clean off there, look really good. Probably should have done this before I did the cleaning, but I'm just going to go chase these threads. Make sure there's no gunk down in there that's going to impede with the bolts as they go in. And you know what? There is a nice bit of resistance there. So what this does now is it just basically clears out the threads all the way down so that it doesn't interfere with the torque settings when we're putting in the A or P bolts. Just take this out, clean it, put it back in again.